shine bright like a diamond. I 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 shine bright like a diamond. DJ Roasted. I shine bright like a diamond. I shine bright like a diamond. I shine bright like a diamond. I shine bright like a
All right, and shalom, shalom. So I want to welcome everybody to Oklahoma City King James Bible University. Then I'm Deacon Micah, and today we are going to be going over 2 Samuel chapter 14, verse 14, and we'll just look at this verse, get an understanding of what it's talking about. Then we are going to dig deep into this verse, and we'll actually be pulling back the onion and looking into the other verses that builds up into this, so we can get the preceptual understanding of what's going on, and also an applicational understanding to where we can walk away with this and be able to apply that overall lesson and the message into our lives and just prepare ourselves. So with that being said, then I'm going to go ahead and flip it over to the preceptor, and we'll dive into 2 Samuel chapter 14, verse 14. All right, so on my screen, and I have it split. So on the left side, then we have the Precept Written Communication tool, and then we have just an e-Bible up on the right side. So I'm going to start on the right side with 2 Samuel chapter 14 and verse 14. So, for we must needs die, and are as water spilt on the ground, which cannot be gathered up again. And that's a full thought. Neither doeth God respect any person, yet doeth he devise means that his banish be not expelled from him. So overall, then this is our foundational verse that we'll be working on. But before then we dive into this, then we have to peel the onion back and get the background information so we can see what's going on. And this is where the Precept written communication tool, then this is coming into handy. So right here on this side, then we have 2 Samuel chapter 14, and we are going to pick it up at verse 1 to see what's going on. So where my mouth is, this is where we're going to start. So now Joab, which this is David's nephew, so the son of Zeruiah, perceived that the king's heart was towards Absalom. So then this is where then his heart, then it's centered on it. It's on flesh and not on the Spirit of God, which that's one of the overall pillars with this lesson that we have to take into account and consider this with ourselves, that our hearts, it needs to be on the Spirit of God and not on flesh. But we're going to look at what's going on with why the king's heart is on towards Absalom. So we'll go to 2 Samuel and we'll look at chapter 21, verse 13, verse 21 through 23. And we'll go here. So when the king heard all these things, he was wroth, very wroth, which then the message about what Amnon and his son had did unto Tamar, then Absalom's sister, then he had forced her, which that was the first evil, number one. And the second one was, when you look at it, that he ended up sending her away in verse 15. So then Amnon hated her exceedingly, so that the hatred wherewith he hated her was greater than the love wherewith he had loved her. And Amnon said unto her, so arise, so be gone. And she said unto him, so there is no cause. This evil in sending me away is greater than the other that thou didst unto me. But he would not hearken unto her, so he didn't hearken unto her spirit. Then he called his servant that ministered unto him and said, put now this woman out from me, and bolt the door after her. So ended up sending her away. So we'll look at verse 19. And Tamar put ashes on her head and rent her garments of diverse colors that was on her, and laid her hand on her head and went out crying. And Absalom her brother said unto her, so has Amnon thy brother been with thee? But hold now thy peace, my sister, so he is thy brother. Regard not this thing. So Tamar remained desolate in her brother's Absalom's house. So this is overall then the tidings that came to David in verse 21, and he was very wroth. And Absalom spoke unto his brother Amnon neither good nor bad. So then he held his peace and he didn't speak to his brother at all concerning these things. But Absalom hated Amnon because he had forced his sister Tamar. And we'll see what had happened when we go to verse 28 and 29. So now Absalom had commanded his servants, saying, so mark ye now, when Amnon's heart is merry with wine, and when I say unto you, smite Amnon, then kill him, and fear not. So have not I commanded you, be courageous and valiant. And right after they had smote Amnon, Absalom, he fled. And this is where David's heart was longing after, was Absalom all of this time. So this is what we're looking at, the background information with verse 1 of 2 Samuel 14. So now Joab, the son of Zeruiah, perceived that the king's heart was towards Absalom. And this is what Joab did, which this subsequent, I need to put action right here. So this is an action, not subsequent. So in Joab, so verse 2, sent to Tekoa and fetched thence a wise woman, and said unto her, so I pray thee, so he got a request, so feign thyself to be a mourner. So with this entire message that he's getting ready to send her to speak unto David, he's overall going to cause David to judge his own situation without knowing it. So, and Joab sent to Tekoa and fetched thence a wise woman, and said unto her, so I pray thee, so feign thyself to be a mourner, and put on now mourning apparel, and anoint not thyself with oil, but be as a woman that has a long time mourned for the dead. So we'll pull this back up. Got it right here, and we'll track back along in this e-Bible, and we'll see the similitudes behind what Joab is sending this woman to do and what's going on with David, the resemblance. So picking it up at verse 37 through 39. So, but Absalom fled and went to Talmai, so the son of Ammihud, king of Geshur, and David mourned for his son every day. So this is this request that Jobab is sending to Tekoa to do, to feign herself to be a mourner, to get David to see what his problem is, his situation. And David mourned for his son every day. So Absalom fled and went to Geshur and was there 3 years. So it was 3 years that David was mourning for Absalom. And the son of King David and the soul of King David longed to go forth unto Absalom, for he was comforted concerning Amnon, seeing he was dead. So this is that resemblance right here, when he's telling her not to put on thy mourning apparel and anoint not thyself with oil, but be as a woman that has a long time mourned for the dead. So we'll continue and go down some more. And come to the king and speak on this manner unto him. And so Jobab put the words in her mouth. So then she's received in this message and she's getting ready to deliver it, which, spiritually, then we'll look at something before we get to the right side. And we'll go to Exodus. We'll look at chapter 4 and verse 12. So we'll look at this right here. So now, therefore, go, and I will be with thy mouth. So this is Christ speaking, and teach thee what thou shalt say. And this is what Jobab, and he's ladding up this woman with, and he's giving her the words to deliver unto David. And we'll also see this because this is not the first time that this happened with David, and it actually happened in chapter 12 of 2 Samuel, when we'll go to 2 Samuel 12 and we'll pick it up at verse 1. And the Lord sent Nathan unto David. So the same way that the Lord had sent Nathan, gave him words and to go and speak to David, then this is what's going on with this woman and with Jobab. So we'll take this down. Now we're on the right side of this Precept written communication tool, and we'll put it on this side now so that we can read from this side. So now we're at verse 4. And when the woman of Tekoa spoke to the king, she fell on her face to the ground and did obeisance and said, so help. So now then she's appealing to the king. So this is an appeal. So help, O king. And the king said unto her, so what aileth thee? And she answered, so this is her response. So I am indeed, so in truth, a widow woman, which we have to scroll this down. And my husband is dead. So she's elaborating. So she's widowed and her husband is dead. And thy handmaid had 2 sons, and they two strove together in the field, and there was none to part them. But the one smote the other and slew him. So this is exactly the mirror match of what David ended up, what he was just going through. And we'll go to 2 Samuel and look at it. So we'll hit 2 Samuel and we'll hit chapter 13, verse 23 and 28 and 29. So 2 Samuel 13 and 23. So here's the first one. And it came to pass after 2 full years. So 2 full years since that accident with Ammon, that Absalom had sheep shearers in Baal-Hazor, which is beside Ephraim. And Absalom invited all the king's sons. So he invited all of David's sons, but the other sons, aside from Amnon, they were just part of the smoke screen. Then the whole occasion behind this entire function that he ended up inviting all of the sons was to get his hands on Ammon, which we'll see that in verse 28 and 29. Now Absalom had commanded his servants, saying, so mark ye now when Ammon's heart is merry with wine, and when I say unto you, smite Ammon, then kill him, and fear not. So have not I commanded you? Be courageous and be valiant. And the servants of Absalom did unto Ammon as Absalom had commanded. And then all the king's sons arose, and every man got him upon his mule and fled. So then this is the situation right here with the Precept written communication tool. So, and thy handmaid had two sons, and they two strove together in the field, and there was none to part them, but the one smote the other and slew him. Which this right here, then this action that Absalom did, then this was presumptuously with guile. So then this was all with intent, which we'll look at the law concerning our murder when we go to Exodus, and we'll look at chapter 21, verse 12 through 14. So we'll at Exodus chapter 12, and we'll go to 21, and we'll look at verse 12 through 14. Actually, that's the wrong book. To meant 21, not 12. So Exodus chapter 21 and verse 12 through 14. Okay, here we are. So he that smiteth a man so that he die shall surely be put to death. And if a man lie not in wait, but God deliver him into his hand, then I will appoint thee a place whither he shall flee. But, so here's the else, so the contrast, if a man come presumptuously, so that's willfully, upon his neighbor to slay him with guile, so with sin, iniquity, thou shalt take him from mine altar, that he may die. So this is that judgment, which is going to be the focus of this conversation between David and this woman. Because this right here, when you precept it and go to 2 Samuel and go to 13, which got to go up. So 2 Samuel chapter 12, well, it's 13 and 32. So 2 Samuel 13 and 32 tells you that what Absalom did to Amnon, it was with intent, and that was determined. So when Jonadab, the son of Shimeah, David's brother, answered and said, let not my lord suppose that they have slain all the young men, the king's sons, for Amnon only is dead. So those only other sons, they was just part of the smoke screen. It was Ammon that was the hit. For by the appointment of Absalom, this has been determined. So it was willful. And not only that, then it was presumptuously with guile. So this had been determined from the day that he had forced his sister Tamar. So Absalom, then he had that plan those 2 years leading up to that event, and he had that determined. So just building up on this conversation, this appeal between this woman and David, and now we'll flip and we'll hit verse 7. So, and behold, the whole family, so now then this is expanding, so it's just escalating. So the whole family is risen against thine handmaid. So these are the revengers of life, the whole family. And they said, deliver him that smote his brother, that we may kill him. So that's the purpose why they want her to deliver the brother. So that's the purpose, that we may kill him. And this is a reason for the life of his brother whom he slew. So we'll pull up some more scriptures alongside what's going on here. So we'll go to Numbers, and we will look at chapter 35, and we'll go to verse 19 through 21. So the revenger of life himself shall slay the murderer. When he meeteth him, he shall slay him. But if he thrust him of hatred, or hurl at him by laying of wait that he die, or in enmity smite him with his hand that he die, he that smote him shall surely be put to death, for he is a murderer. The revenger of life shall slay the murderer when he meeteth him. Which that'd take you once again back to Absalom. Then he had that determined to slay Amnon. So then this was, then he lied in wait. And this wasn't an accident. And with that being said, then we'll build, and we'll look at Romans and go to chapter 13, verse 1 through 4. So let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there's no power but of God. So the powers that be are ordained of God. So whosoever therefore resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. So there's that plumb line right there. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Or will thou then not be afraid of the power? So do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. So this is going to what's over in Sirach 39 and 25, where for the good are good things created, and for sinners the evil things. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. And here's that plumb line. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid. And this is the reason. So that was a full thought. For he beareth not the sword, so that's judgment in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. Which, in this case, the lifestyle, this would take us to Genesis chapter 9, verse 5 and 6, right here, right here in Genesis 9 and 5 and 6. And surely your blood of your lives will I require. So at the hand of every beast will I require it in the hand of man. So at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. So whosoever sheddeth man's life, by man shall his life be shed. For in the image of God made he man. So in Absalom, then he's taken a life presumptuously with guile, and here are the revengers of life in this scenario. According to this parable, they're wanting this woman to deliver up her two sons. So that's the reason right there. And then we'll continue with this verse. And we will destroy their heir also. And so they shall quench my coal, which is left. So this is the big key right here, this entire teaching. So the woman, her concern is this right here. Then if these revengers of life get a hold of her other son and kill him for the life that he took, if they end up killing the other son, her coal, they're going to quench it, which spiritually, this is where we have to flip this and put this back on us. So your desire, which that's what that coal is, and it should be towards the Most High, towards God, and not towards flesh, because that'll run you right to Matthew, where we'll get ready to look at it, where he tells us clearly in Matthew, and we'll pick it up at chapter 10, verse 33 through 34. We'll go right here, and then we'll extend to 35. So, but whosoever shall deny me before men, so then you have that flesh in front of God, him will I also deny before my Father which is in heaven. Think not that I come to send peace on earth. So I come not to send peace, but a sword. For I come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, which we'll skip and go to 37 and 38. So he that loveth so promises father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he that loveth son or daughter, which if you flip that son or that daughter spiritually, those are your fruits, your works, more than me is not worthy of me. So this is what we have to look at spiritually with this coal in this verse. So spiritually, then what's going on with this woman, this parable that she's brought to David is that coal, then that's that other son that's still alive, that's by the law, then he's condemned to be put to death for the life that he took. And her concern is she's appealing to David for this matter right here, then she doesn't want her son to be taken. And the thing is when your desire, then it's not towards the creator, but it's towards flesh, whether then it's your mother, your father, your son or daughter, or it's your own works of the flesh, and whatever it is that you're holding before God, it's real easy to end up skewering doctrines and teachings and blinding your eyes from the truth. And you end up resting judgment, which that'll get you in trouble. So we have Deuteronomy chapter 16 and verse 19. So thou shalt not wrest judgment. So you're not twisting, not flipping, not turning your eyes from anything. Thou shalt not respect persons, neither take a gift. For a gift doeth blind the eyes of the wise and pervert the words of the righteous. So this is the meat and potatoes of what we're getting ready to look at. So when we apply this to ourselves, this code, then that should be the Spirit of God. And that's not flesh, and it's not anything else in your heart. Then that desire, that fire inside it should be for the Spirit of God. And in this case, pitting this back on David, then that coal in this parable, this is Absalom, which we'll see this. So we'll hit 2 Samuel, and we'll go to chapter 19 and verse 5 and 6. And Jobab came into the house to the king and said, Thou hast shamed this day the face of all thy servants, which this day have saved thy life, and the lives of thy sons, and of thy daughters, and the lives of thy wives, and the lives of thy concubines, and that thou lovest thine enemies, and hateth thy friends. So that's what we was just seeing in Matthew chapter 10, where then you end up loving flesh more than God. And that thou lovest thine enemies, and hateth thy friends. For thou hast declared this day that thou regardest neither princes nor servants. For this day I perceive that if Absalom's had lived, and all we had died this day, then that had pleased thee well. So this is what's going on. And we'll look at Numbers and hit this precept where David was messing up. So we'll go to 35 and 31. So moreover, ye shall take no satisfaction for the life of a murderer, which is guilty of death, but he shall surely be put to death. So David, then he's taken satisfaction for Absalom, which then he's already committed a sin that's worthy of death. This is what a woman is trying to get him to see. And overall, the purpose of this lesson, as we continue to dive and get deeper into this, is we'll see the provisions that David made to cover for the son that was supposed to be put to death. When we apply this and put this back on ourselves, you have to look in the mirror and ask yourself, do you make provisions for any lust of the flesh, any works of the flesh, or are you making provisions for respecting people, respecting persons in judgment? So before then I move further, then I'm looking at the comment section, and I just want to make sure that everybody is tracking along before I move forward. So then I'm looking at the comment section and still waiting. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So that's the scenario that's been painted. So, before we move forward, then we'll just go through this again. So, and behold, so the whole family, so the revengers of life, is risen against thine handmaid. And they said, so deliver him that smote his brother, purpose that we may kill him, in a reason for the life of his brother whom he slew. And we will destroy the heir also. And this is a concern. And so they shall quench my coal, so that desire which is left, and shall not leave to my husband, which now will go down. My husband weigh nor remainder upon the earth, which actually this was named, and I had flipped that spiritually, so we'll put that there. So that's what her concern is that they take this coal, then it's going to blot out that name, and she's not going to have a remainder upon the earth. So now what we'll do is we'll get to the other side, of this precept written communication tool. And pay very close attention to this right here in verse 8. And the king said unto the woman, so go to thine house, and I will give charge concerning thee. So you see how right there, then he just covered for this woman, because in this verse right here, this is a spitting image, a silhouette of what David is going through, where then his son Absalom, then he's already committed a sin worthy of death. And in this parable, as he's covering for this woman, her son, he's covering for his as well. Then he's given this judgment as somebody that's faulty. That's what this is talking about when it says, go to thine house and I will give charge concerning thee. So he's getting ready to pronounce a commandment that's going to cover the life of her son, which we'll run some precepts, and we'll go to First Maccabees and go to chapter 1 and verse 50. So First Maccabees 1 and 50. And whomsoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. So this goes back again with this First Maccabees 1 and 50 to the verse that we had left in Deuteronomy. So we'll revisit it and go back to Deuteronomy 16 and 19. So thou shalt not wrest judgment, and that's a full thought, which, taking it here to verse 8 in 2 Samuel, then he had just gave a charge right there concerning the life of her son. So this is similar to what Job, when you look at chapter 1, what he was going through with his problems. So being self-righteous and covering for his sons. So we'll look at verse 4 and 5 in Job. And his sons went and feasted in their houses, so every one his day, and sent and called for their sisters to eat and drink with them. And it was so, when the days of their feasting were gone about, that Job sent and sanctified them, and rose up early in the morning, and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, it may be that my sons have sinned, and cursed God in their hearts. Thus did Job continuously. So in this verse right here, this precept, you see how Job taking all of these cattle and killing them, covering for his sons. And over here in 2 Samuel, David, then he just gave a charge to cover the life of this woman's son in this parable, which you got to remember, Jobab sent this woman, he put the words in her mouth, and he did that for a particular reason. So, and the woman of Tekoa said unto the king, so my lord, O king, and here's a confession, so the iniquity be on me and on my father's house. So the accompaniment, on my father's house. So then she's confessing to David, this is a full-blown screw-up. Then I'm dead to rights. So we'll go to 2 Samuel and we'll look at it and go to chapter 28 and 29. Okay, so got to go down some more. So now Absalom had commanded his servants, so saying, mark ye now when Ammon's heart is merry with wine, so as soon as he's drunk. And when I say unto you, smite Ammon, then kill him. So fear not, have not I commanded you? So he gave them a commandment. So be courageous and be valiant. And the servants of Absalom did unto Amnon as Absalom had commanded. So in this verse right here, in verse 9 of 2 Samuel 14, so the iniquity be on me and on my father's house, and the king in his throne. So his sovereignty for doctrines and teachings, that's what this throne is spiritually. So I'll capitalize that. Be guiltless. So she's telling him right here, this is on me. And we'll go down further. Now we're in verse 10. And the king said, so whosoever saith aught to thee, bring him to me, and he shall not touch thee any more. So then he just doubled down on what he told her up here in verse 8. So this charge. So then her son, as of right now, then he's got some protection from King David, then who's guilty to be put to death. So now we'll go to verse 11 and we'll look at this some more. So we're expanding. Then said she, so I pray thee, so appealing some more, let the king remember the Lord thy God, that thou wouldest not suffer the revengers of life to destroy my son. So she's elaborating on his requests. So let the king remember the Lord thy God, that thou wouldest not suffer the revengers of life or blood to destroy my son. And he said, as the Lord liveth, so he's getting ready to put an oath on that now. There shall not one hair of thy son fall to the earth. So he just made her a promise. So that's the third time. Then the woman said, so let thine handmaid, I pray thee, speak one word unto my lord the king. And he said, say on. So she already got him now, then he already put the oath on it. Now then she can reveal in what the entire purpose of this was. And the woman said, wherefore then hast thou thought such a thing against the people of God? And this is the point, the whole point of all of this. For the king doeth speak this thing as one which is faulty, and that the king doeth not fetch home again his banished, which she's already getting him to see himself in this judgment that he's pronounced. So we'll go to chapter 30, 2 Samuel 13 and 37 through 39. But Absalom fled. So this is the banished right here that she's talking about. So, but Absalom fled and went to Talmai. So the son of Ammihud, king of Geshur, and David mourned for his son every day. So Absalom fled and went to Geshur and was there 3 years. So this is him right here that's been banished. So for we must needs die, which this is a subpoint, all flesh, then it's going to die. So to every last one of us, then we have a death dates and it's going to happen. So we'll see this and we'll go to Genesis chapter 6, verse 5 through 7. And God saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented, so it reminded the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. So it angered him, so that grieved in that fierce anger. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth. It's a full thought. Both man and beasts and the creeping thing and the fowls of the air, for it reminded me that I have made them. So he's already pronouncing this right here in Genesis, that all flesh and it's going to die, which will build upon what we've seen in Genesis. We'll go to 1 Esdras. We find it. 1 Esdras chapter 4, verse 37 and 38. So wine is a wicked. So then this pollution, this fornication. So the king is wicked. So the women are wicked, and these other spirits. All the children of men are wicked, and such are all their wicked works. So all of the works of the flesh, and it's wicked too. And there is no truth in them. In their unrighteousness also they shall perish. As for the truth, it endureth, and is always strong. So it liveth and conquereth forevermore. So it's already showing us that our sinful deeds, works of the flesh, and it's going to perish, and also in our flesh is going to die as well, which just by running another precept. So now we can have one from the Old Testament and from the Apocrypha, and in the New Testament. It shows you right here in Revelations 21 and 1. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away. Because tells you in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, the earth is without form and void, and it's full of iniquity, full of sin. It's got to go. So for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea, so no more people. So all flesh, then it is going to die. And actually, would go down even more. So for we must needs die. So we're on the right side, and here's a comparison, and are as water spilt on the ground in the illustration, so which cannot be gathered up again. So then she's given David a comparison. In the same way, if you were to take water, you went and got a cup, got a bottle, filled it up, and you just went outside and spilled it on the concrete, then that spot, it's going to be wet for some time, but it's going to dry up. There's no way that you're going to gather that water back up out of the concrete and put it back up inside of the cup. And that's how our lives here, that's in this earth right now, this fleshly life, then we're going to die, and once you die, then that's it, and there's no coming back. So we'll look at a Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 5, and we'll go to verse 13. As we all have a death date. So even so, we in like manner, as soon as we be born, begin to draw to our end. And I know this may be tough for some people, depending on, I know it's a mixed audience that's listening to this, but every last one of us. So myself, then you that's listening, and if you have children, them, grandchildren, them too, as soon as they were born, they were already drawn towards their end, and have no sign of virtue to show, but were consumed in our own wickedness. So this flesh, then it's going to die. And I actually put together then a illustration that I want to show right here. So every last one of us, then we have our death dates. It's just the birth date, then that's given. And you know when you were born, that death date, you don't know it, but it's already been determined. So in Job chapter 14, verse 5, it makes it clear. So seeing his days are determined, so the number of his months are with thee. So thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. So then we all have numbers on our flesh. And once you get to whatever number that's been appointed on your flesh, you're not going past that, and you're not coming back. That's it. So I'm just going to let that sink in for a second. All right. So what we'll do is now we'll go back to this. And we left off with the similar to right there. So for we must needs die, and are as water spilt on the ground, which that's that illustration of this life right here, which cannot be gathered up again. So that's a full thought. So here's the next one. Neither doeth God respect any person. So right after you die, the judgment then that happens next. And it's telling you right there that the Creator, then he doesn't respect people in judgment. And this is that issue that David had with the judgment that he had pronounced to that woman that he was going to cover for a son, which was guilty to be put to death. So we'll look at this, and we'll go to Deuteronomy once again, and we'll look at that for the third time before running other precepts. So we got Deuteronomy 16 and 19. So thou shalt not wrest judgment. So not flipping and scripping, not picking and choosing, not wrestling against doctrines and teachings. Thou shalt not respect persons, neither taketh a gift. For a gift doeth blind the eyes of the wise, and pervert the words of the righteous. So we'll span on this, and we'll run some more precepts, which we'll go to 2nd Idris, and we'll go to chapter 4 in verse 39 and 40. So we're right here. Well, actually, I made a mistake. That's 1st Idris, not 2nd. So I'll correct that in my written communication tool. So it's 4 verse 39 and 40. Right here. So with her, there is no accepting of persons or rewards. So this is talking about the spirit of wisdom. But she doeth the things that are just, and refraineth from all unjust and wicked things. And all men do well like of her works. Neither in her judgment is any unrighteousness. And that's a full thought, which will stop right there. Then you're going to be judged righteously according to your works. So then if you end up doing something that's wicked and you get to the very end, you'll get that righteous recompense according to your works. But if you've lived righteously, when you get to the end, you'll get that righteous judgment. Then it's according to your works, which will go to Colossians, and we'll go to chapter 3, and we'll look at verse 25 right here. And this is very clear right here. But he that doeth wrong shall receive for the wrong which he has done, and there is no respect of persons. So it's making it clear that if you got some dirt on you and you get to the very end and you stand before the Creator, you're going to get that righteous recompense. And it's not going to be the way that David was going to cover for that woman's son. No. Then you stand before the Creator and you're worthy to be put to death. You're going to die. Hold on. Give me a sec. All right. So it's making that clear, which will now go to 2 Chronicles, and we'll go to chapter 19, verse 6 and 7, which this is the next precept. And you see how scriptures, and it's not breaking, then it's repeating itself over and over. And said to the judges, so take heed. Well, actually, let me extend up to verse 5 through 7. And he set judges in a land throughout all the fenced cities of Judah, city by city, and said to the judges, so take heed what you do. For you judge not for flesh, but for the Lord, in who is with you in judgment. So wherefore now let the desire of the Lord be upon you, and take heed and do it. For there is no iniquity with the Lord our God, neither respect of persons, nor taking of gifts. So that's that precept right there. It's telling you it's going to be a righteous judgment. Yet doeth he devise means, so we're back in a written communication tool, that his banished be not expelled from him. So when it says, yet doeth he devise means, this yet, which I'll capitalize that's the else. So this is where the difference then it kicks in. So David had Absalom, and, what no problem with him, fleeing and being over there in Gershur, and he was longing for him, but then he was covering for his son. Creator right here, then there is no running from the Creator when it comes to judgment, which we'll see that when we look at this. So we have Ecclesiastes, and we have chapter 12, and we'll go to verse 7. So right here. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was. So just as what we were looking at right here, for we must needs die, and are as water spilt on the ground, dust, and it's going to return to the earth, so the flesh. So all of us, and we're going to die, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. So you got to stand before the judgment seat of Christ. And our Creator already told us in Isaiah that his word is not going to return unto him void. When we go to Isaiah and we go to 55, in verse 11. So that's going to happen, not going to avoid judgment. So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. So that applies to what we just seen in Ecclesiastes. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. Which now we'll hit Revelations, and we'll go to chapter 20, verse 11 through 13. Which now we're looking at end time prophecy. So God is making very good on what he saying. And I saw a great white throne. So that white, and it's pure, and it's righteousness. And him that sat on it, from whose face earth and the heaven fled away. So and when it's time for that judgment, then you ain't gonna have nowhere to hide. Nowhere to flee to. And there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, so small and great, so the people that's the poor and people that have became important people in this world according to the flesh. So no respecter of persons. So the small and the great, don't matter how rich you are, still going to stand before the Creator. So stand before God. And the books were opened, and another book was opened, which these books you don't want to be in those. And another book, so the singular one, this is the one you want to be in, was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books, according to their works. So the Most High is not covering for nobody. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. And they were judged every man according to his works. So it's all based on what you did, and it's going to be a right down a little of the middle judgment. So this is the issue with David, which Jobab, through this woman, was trying to get David to see. That the judgment that he had pronounced in his parable was one that was, for the king doeth speak this thing as one which is faulty, and that the king doeth not fetched home again his banished. So when you look at verse 14, it's telling you that the Creator doesn't respect persons in judgment. So right after you die, that judgment, it's going to be a righteous judgment, which, I have a clip that we're going to look at. And, this is going to be tough, because it was tough for me when I put this clip together. And, if you're faint of heart, it's now the time that I would recommend that you just go on ahead and cut from the lesson, and we'll catch you next week. So for the people that do have the stomach to digest this, then here we go.
Very dramatic day in court as a young man learned his fate. He beat his girlfriend's little boy to death because he wouldn't stop crying. Brittany Smallwood has more on today's sentencing for us. Hi, Brittany.
Teresa, it was intense at sentencing. The courtroom was packed with family and friends supporting the defendant, Dylan Shoemaker, and the victim's family. As soon as the case was called, Shoemaker walked into the courtroom and started crying, telling everyone how sorry he was.
I didn't mean to kill Austin. Ashley, I really didn't. I really think I did that. I didn't mean to hurt him.
Dylan Shoemaker walked into a state Supreme courtroom pleading his case, telling his victim's mother and the court he's remorseful for what he did. Shoemaker was sentenced Friday for beating 23-month-old Austin Smith last March. Before the sentence was handed down, Shoemaker and his defense attorney fought for the minimum sentence, 15 years to life.
I can't take back what was done. I wish I could. I would give my life for Austin. I loved him a lot.
Austin Smith was completely defenseless. That's a given. But there were other dynamics at work there, including my client's inability to either control his anger or frustration and his inexperience in babysitting.
Based on his short life now, what is to say he won't do this again?
Well, we don't know that. I think it's completely unlikely. It was a situational, circumstantial thing.
In Judge M. William Bowler's last words to Shoemaker, he told the now 17-year-old that in his short life he's caused so much despair to so many people, Bowler said he listened intently to Shoemaker's testimony during trial and called him a manipulator who minimizes his actions.
The record will show that you admitted that on July 23, 2013, in a phone call to your mother from the holding center, you stated, and I got a quote from the court reporter, "I am a 16-year-old blonde. Probably all I have to do is cry in front of the jury, and they're going to feel sorry for me," end quote.
Afterwards, Shoemaker was sentenced to 25 years to life behind bars.
Shoemaker's defense attorney, Joseph Terranova, says he plans to immediately appeal the sentence. Both say the death of Austin Smith was not intentional. Reporting live in the newsroom, Brittany Smallwood.
This is 18-year-old Tony Farmer, a highly recruited high school basketball star, being sentenced for his crime.
As to count 2 in that case, felonious assault, a felony of the second degree, it is ordered that the defendant shall serve a term of 2 years in prison on that count. As to count 3 of that case, the robbery, which is also a felony of the second degree, the court orders that the defendant shall serve a term of 2 years on that count as well.
As you can see, he looked upset and confused about the sentence. He fell to the ground. Well, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison after pleading guilty to kidnapping and assaulting his girlfriend. He played high school basketball in Ohio and was considered one of the 100 best players in the country. The team was being recruited by several college basketball programs, including Ohio State and Michigan State.
Parent 1 as charged in count 1. We further find true the allegations that Diana Jean Lovejoy was vicariously armed with a firearm within the meaning of Penal Code Section 12022, Parent A, Parent 1, dated 11/13/17, signed foreperson. Same title, same cause. Verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Diana Jean Lovejoy, guilty of the crime of attempted murder of Greg Mulvihill in violation of Penal Code Section 664/187, Parent A, Parent 1, as charged on count 2. We further find true the allegation that Diana Jean Lovejoy acted willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation within the meaning of Penal Code Section 189. We further find true the allegation that Diana Jean Lovejoy was vicariously armed with a firearm within the meaning of Penal Code Section 12022, Parent A, Parent 1, dated 11/13/17, signed foreperson. In the Superior Court of the State of California, in and for the County of San Diego, the people of the State of California, Plaintiff versus Weldon K. McDavid, defendant. Case number SCN 363925, DA number OCD 980. Verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Weldon K. McDavid, guilty of the crime of conspiracy to commit murder.
Hang on. All right, we're going to need to take a break. You're done. And if we could have, the jury go back into the Okay, folks. Okay, at this point, we need to clear out the courtroom. Let's go. George?
Aware of any of this?
No.
What about the car insurance? Do you have insurance?
No.
Driving without insurance, too. Okay. Is there anything else that anyone needs to present before I sentence? Mr. Sweet, do you have anything else you want to say?
I have nothing further.
Okay. All right. I have considered the record by defendant's own admissions. She has previously been on probation for at least one or 2 incidents in Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court. Appear to be crimes of violence, even though they involve family members. Although she is 18 years of age, there's no adult criminal history. I'll note she just turned 18 weeks after this offense. Or 19.
She turned 18.
Just turned 18.
On April 1st.
Okay. She turned 18, and this offense occurred within weeks.
That is true.
I have considered the facts and circumstances of this particular case, and I find that the facts of this offense make this offense the most serious form of the offense. Leaving the scene of an accident involving 2 7-year-olds is the worst form of a hit skip, in my opinion. I have considered the victim impact statements that I received during the pretrial from Mason's mother. I also received an impact statement in writing from her, and I'm considering her oral statements here in open court today. I'm also considering Mason's statement that was submitted to me in writing, and I'm going to note that he has been present all morning. It's now 12:30. He's been here for the 3 hours of these court proceedings today. I've considered the statements that were presented from the bus driver, considered defense counsel's statements, defendant's own statements as well. I've considered the positive screen for marijuana, that the defendant's positive today. She's on bond and positive for an illegal drug. She has no car insurance at the time of the offense. She's also on probation to another court, potentially in violation of her probation in juvenile court. I'm not privy to any of that specific information. So I have considered the state's recommendations here for, as they were outlined previously by the prosecutor. So I've considered all of this in light of the purposes and principles of sentencing, and I've balanced the factors that I am required to under the law. I'm also going to make the finding that sanctions that were previously imposed in juvenile court, she's not been rehabilitated. She's on probation and she's committed a new criminal offense. So I've considered all of this. I've balanced the factors that I'm required to under the law. The sentence will be as follows. As to the A count, that is the hit skip as amended, there'll be a $500 fine. I'm ordering you to pay court costs. 180 days in the Lake County Jail with 0 suspended. You'll serve all 180 days in the Lake County Jail. I find that you're not amenable to probation. Your driver's license is suspended for the maximum time that I can suspend it under the law. That's 3 years. There are no driving privileges. The B count, there'll be a $350 fine in court costs. On the C count, a $150 fine in court costs. At the D count, $150 fine in court costs. Restitution's been requested by the state. There is no amount of restitution that has been presented by the court to the court for my consideration at this time. The defendant has indicated that she's willing to pay restitution, but I don't have any numbers in front of me. I will order restitution, and what will happen is if there's going to be a hearing on that, then Mr. Sweet will file an appropriate motion if we need to discuss what that is. We can do that at another time, but I am ordering restitution for the victims here. Now, Ms. Bellows, have I missed anything?
No. This did affect the 25, the kids that were on the bus that saw this happen also.
Judge, just to reiterate, on the hits kit, there were 6 points. And we did recommend eventually remedial driving with a retesting.
The 6 points will be assessed by the BMB.
Right, I just wanted to make that clear. The same
with the 2 points on the B count.
That's true.
Yes. All assessed by the BMB.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Sweet, is there anything additional from you?
I would only respectfully request that Ms. Wilson be given a brief opportunity to get her affairs in order because she's juggling a lot right now and she has to square herself away with her commitments made to the Army. I would respectfully request a delay in reporting to jail.
The request is denied. Ms. Wilson?
Is there any way I can get less days? I'm so sorry, but it was a complete mistake.
This is...
I would never do that on purpose. And I just wish someone could see that. Why would I? If I was really going super fast, those kids would be way more hurt. Way more hurt.
Ms. Wilson, this behavior, it's not just going around a stop sign where kids are getting on and off a bus. You left them there. You didn't stop, and you left 2 7-year-olds on the side of the road. As a society, we don't treat each other this way. You were so involved in you that you didn't consider anyone else around you. And for that, there is a penalty. And this is it. You are very lucky today in that the 2 little boys are alive and able to live and hopefully enjoy very long lives. Your error in judgment could have cost 2 lives here. So the 180 days that you will serve is a reminder as to the fact that you couldn't focus on anyone but yourself. If there was more time, if I could give you more days in jail under the law, I would, because this is the worst form of the offense. Is there anything else?
I have nothing further.
Thank you. We're adjourned.
I'll let you bet today. You can, you know what? You got it. You can go from the holding cell. When you come back, I'll take all the property.
Okay.
I shine bright like a
All right, so that was the end of that clip, and just overall, then the big takeaway with that one is then you pitch yourself in that situation, because all of us eventually, spiritually, what I was trying to get us to see is that we have to stand in front of the Creator at the very end, just as 2 Samuel 14 was saying, that neither does God respect any person, yet do if he divides means that his banished be not expelled from him. So with that being said, Ford and I end up rolling the Precept cheat sheets, because that's coming next. And I'm just looking at the comment section and just making sure that everybody, was tracking along with the lesson, and there's just no sort of questions remaining. So I'm just looking at the comment section now. All right. So, if any questions do arise up later in a week concerning this lesson, just send me an email at deaconmike@kjbu.org. Getting ready to run the Precept cheat sheets. And until next time, peace.
I saw